of valuation theory and practice, considerations on sustainability, and new market dynamics. Valuers have a reputation of conservatism, disliking innovation and change in the methods of valuation that they use. Whether this reputation is valid for all is open to doubt, but most people in the property industry would recognize some truth in the statement. It is apparent that valuation techniques have constantly changed and adapted as the property market itself has evolved. Consider market conditions at the turn of the 20th century. In 1900, leases of commercial property were very long. Leases of 99 and 125 years were very common. Inflation was either unknown or not recognized. Until about the Second World War, inflation was virtually non-existent and population increases did not exert much pressure on land and land resources. Hence, there was not much increase in rental values and capital values of real property over a number of years. Hence, there were no mechanisms for adjusting the rent paid during the course of a lease. Property as an investment was very secure and stable, being similar to long-term government-issued fixed interest securities, gilts. Valuation of property investment was accordingly simple, involving the capitalization of the rent passing under the lease using an appropriate multiplier. This multiplier, the year's purchase, was simply the inverse of the initial yield or annual return of the property. It was easily observable from market transactions on property investments and directly comparable with the yield on gilts. Property was more illiquid, involved more management, and was slightly riskier than gilts. It was obvious that property yields should be slightly higher to compensate the investor. Thus, valuation methods and valuation tables were developed on the assumption that rents were paid and received annually in arrear. This premise has persisted even though rent has always been payable on a quarterly or monthly in advance basis. Let us now move forward 75 years and examine market conditions and valuation methods in 1975. Market conditions are obviously very different. Pause for inflation in the economy, reduction in lease length with upward rent reviews to the open market rental value, with the tenant being responsible for all the running cost and maintenance on the property, etc. If the changes of the property market from 1900 to 1975 were striking, it can be argued that the changes from 1975 to the year 2000 have been even greater, and the changes have been greatest in the last 2 decades of the century. The changes can usually be viewed in terms of 3 categories, though there is some overlap and interrelation between them. These categories are the property market environment, the economic environment, and the technological environment. Valuation techniques had changed accordingly. The relationship between gilts and property was broken. The straight initial yield approach was no longer reliable, particularly midway between rent reviews. The techniques were adapted to cope, and it was in this period that term and reversion, layer and hardcore, and equal yield methods were developed. New approaches were also developed, led by academics. UK academics such as Baum, Crosby, and Macmin promoted techniques such as the shortcut discounted cash flow and real value approaches, both of which had the advantage of stripping out the inflationary element in the valuation and re-establishing the link between property and the overall return on fixed interest securities. This is important as it should be stated that the core techniques which have been used in valuation for generations, should not be discarded under current market conditions. The principles of valuation and the methodology used in 1900 can be successfully applied in the year 2000 and beyond. The problems arise where traditional techniques are used without thought, or where they are used in complex circumstances which they were not designed to cope with. In these cases, there is a greater risk of the valuation failing. There is therefore a need to look at both familiar techniques and methods and also some of the newer, more advanced methodologies, because each has their place. This means that advanced does not always mean superior. The most complex, technologically advanced method might not be the best way of tackling a simple problem, just as the simple way almost certainly would not be the best for tackling complexity. The story about the space pen is brought to mind. This story may be an urban myth, but the meaning is appropriate. Early in the manned space program, NASA scientists realized that astronauts were going to have problems writing notes in zero gravity, as conventional pens were gravity-fed. After many years of expensive research and development, NASA scientists came up with the space pen that had a complex integral pump activated by a pressure of the point. It worked absolutely beautifully. Russian space scientists, of course, had the same problem. They solved it in 5 minutes at near zero cost. How? They issued their consonants with pencils. The moral of the story is very clear. Don't discard the simple unless you have to. Valuing sustainability, reflecting sustainability in property valuations is not strictly speaking a development in valuation methods, but a development in the application of methods. Hence, it may be noted, assessing the sustainability characteristics of the property to be valued and reflecting sustainability characteristics in the valuation is important. Therefore, sustainability matters do not affect the method of valuation used by a valuer, but will impact on the diligence and may affect the valuer's assessment of the inputs to a given valuation. Concluding remarks. The contractor's method or test. The basis of valuation for rating is rental value. There will be no rental evidence available for some properties. Then valuers use contractor's method or test to fix the annual value. At present, valuers take 4% of land value, 6% of building value, and 8% of value of plant and machinery to estimate the rental value. This application of the method is incorrect. We have to apply suitable percentage to the effective capital value. Suggest to apply 5% of all values depending on the situation. So it should be noted that the method of valuation is correct. Application of the method is incorrect. Valuation of leasehold interest. Then again another application. Application of a year's purchase to capitalize the annual profit rent of a leasehold interest of a tea estate with a tea factory using a rate of 3% to 4% for accumulation of the sinking fund and remunerative rate at 12% not realistic. No investor will do this. When it is possible to earn more than 3 to 4% interest. Hence, applying the same rate for both accumulative and remunerative is more realistic. Hence, single rate years purchase at 12% for the unexpired term may be used. Therefore, here also dual rate is okay, but the application of the dual rate is the mistake that we have done. Valuation of agricultural properties, modified investment method of valuation. Valuation model, market value is equal to net annual income into year's purchase. Here the valuer has to assess the extent to which the property to be valued currently meets sustainability criteria and arrive at an informed view on the likelihood of these impacting on value. That is, how a well-informed purchaser would take account of them in making a decision as to offer price. Application of year's purchase in perpetuity, income received quarterly in advance is suggested. Tea estate with a tea factory, application of an appropriate rate of return of 9.25% to 11.25%, YP 11.43 to 9.5 naught is suggested. Substantially of a tea estate income, sustainability of a tea estate encompasses a wide range of physical, social, environmental, and economic factors that can impact on value, and valuers should be aware of these sustainability features and the implication these could have on property values in the short, medium, and longer term. The range of issues includes, but not limited to, key environmental risks such as ground instability issues, flooding, climate change, etc. If tea productivity is to be stabilized over the long term, replanting should be undertaken at a faster rate and in the most desirable manner, and climate, stability, suitability of the land, age and type of tea plant, availability of Ceylon tea land logo, and rainforest land certificate green proc, resident labor, adoption of good agronomic practices, and soil conservation measures, etc., and if tea factory is equipped with necessary machinery and are in good condition, if all above sustainable features are favorable, suggest adopting a rate of return of 9.25%, years purchase 11.43 to estimate the market value of freehold interest. Very often we adopt 10, I suggest to adopt 11.43 if all above conditions are met. Boatleaf Tea Factory, appropriate rate of return of 12% to 14.25%, YP 8.95 to 7.63 is suggested. Cost approach may be preferred as a check method. Rubber cultivation, appropriate rate of return of 10.75% to 12.25%, YP 9.92 to 8.78 is suggested. If rubber productivity is to be stabilized over the long term, 3% of the total cultivated extent should be replanted annually, and during immature phase of growth, which is about 5 years, 10 centimeter girth increment every year is expected. Sustainability characteristics such as artificial rainforest, carbon footprint, etc., and availability of very close substitute synthetic rubber are to be considered when fixing the YP. Coconut cultivation 20 to 40 years old with underplantation. Appropriate rate of return of 9.25% to 10.25%, YP 11.43 to 10.37 is suggested. Optimum density ranges from 64 to 76 trees per acre. A square method is adopted when planting 26 feet by 26 feet, 64 trees. Triangular method 76 trees. Rectangular method 65 trees. Depending on the number of trees, you can adjust the YP per acre. Young coconut cultivation, 8 to 20 years. Appropriate rate of return, 9% to 10%. YP 11.73 to 10.62 is suggested. There are 4 categories of coconut lands in Sri Lanka. Resident coconut lands where fertilizer is applied. Resident coconut lands where fertilizer is not applied. Non-resident coconut lands where fertilizer is applied. Non-resident coconut lands where fertilizer is not applied. So we have to consider when valuing these aspects also. Cinnamon, appropriate rate of return of 9% to 10%. YP 11.73 to 10.62 is suggested. Considering the availability of minimum export pricing formula and implementation of SLS 81 and geographical indication, GI certification for Ceylon cinnamon. Sri Lanka is the largest producer of true cinnamon in the world and accounts for about 80% of the world market. So based on this, and also I wish to mention our central bank officer is also there. In Sri Lanka, there is a reputation to say money laundering is taking place through cinnamon market. So please take necessary steps. Paddy, appropriate rate of return of 10%, YP 10.62 is suggested. Finally, I wish to thank the organizing committee of the Third International Conference on Real Estate Management and Valuation for giving me this opportunity to present my views on valuation theory and practice before a learned audience such as this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your words of wisdom. Now, we respectfully invite these distinguished chairpersons to proceed with this session, and also we cordially invite them to convey the instructions for today's presenters.
Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You all are welcome again to this technical session. There are four presenters, I believe, here with us. Each presenter has 15 minutes to present. And at the end of 10th minute, you can see 5 minutes card. And at the end of 13 minutes, you can see second minute, 2 minutes card. And at the end of all four presentations, my panelists, Dr. Nishani and Dr. Rangajiva, will briefly comment on each presentations, while the audience can make questions or your views for each presentations.
Thank you, sir. So now we are going to have an online presentation by Abdul Rashid Amidu from University of Auckland, New Zealand, on the study on investigating valuation quality in the fast-changing valuation profession, a valuer perspective.
Thank you very much for having me. My name is Abdul Rashid Amidu. I'm a senior lecturer at University of Auckland. And the topic I'm presenting is a research that Deborah and I are doing, trying to understand what is valuation quality. I'm sure if I ask most of you in the audience what quality means, I will hear different response. So we came up with this idea of trying to understand what valuation quality actually means, because we think that right now valuation is going through some challenging time. I mean, the profession is witnessing a lot of challenges depending on wherever you look. So we think that is the best time to try to understand what quality means. And the challenges that the profession is going through, one of those challenges is the fact that the business environment is becoming increasingly competitive. I'm sure it's the same thing in Sri Lanka, but here in New Zealand, and I've also been in the UK where I've taught for 7 years. The market environment is really, really very competitive, and we face a situation where our clients have the power because they can always just shop around until they get what they want, so they control the market because they have the economic power. And also, the trend that we are seeing here in New Zealand, and I think in Australia, and also in UK, is that there's a steady decline in the number of valuers. Right now in New Zealand and Australia, the average age of a valuer is about 50 to 55. Which is very ridiculous thing to hear, and that is impacting on the profession. But also, much more importantly, one of the challenges that the valuation profession is facing right now is the rapid expansion in information and communication technology. I'm sure everyone in the audience is aware of this big data thing, which is a revolution that is sweeping the valuation industry right now. And that is very disturbing because we see that more and more information that used to be held exclusively by valuers are now being made available from different sources to more and more people. And the impact that is having on the valuation profession is that the other professionals are now able to encroach into the valuation profession. So you have the banks making an aggressive move to try to take some of the job that valuers do. Here in New Zealand and Australia, there's a move by banks to acquire the copyright of valuation reports from valuers. So that over time they can develop data, and then they can be able to run through this data and then do evaluation without having to go through valuers. So it's really a challenging time for valuers, and that competitive nature of the business environment would demand that successful valuation firms will have to think about the way they actually practice. Some have suggested that valuation firms will start looking at how they can produce valuation at a very minimal cost. But we will argue that that is not the way to go because when you start cutting costs, obviously that impact on the standard, and that erode the credibility and then the trust that people have in valuation. So we are arguing that rather than trying to cut costs, valuation firms will focus on offering consistently high quality services. But the question then is, what actually constitutes valuation quality? We, in trying to answer this question, we look at psychology to try to understand what decision quality actually means, and we came up with these two approaches of understanding what decision quality is all about. There's an approach which is widely used in valuation literature, which is the outcome-oriented approach. That approach assumes that there's a rational decision that can be made, and that decision making can be optimized, which means that in the field that you're talking about, there's something that can be called a right answer, and so based on that right answer, whatever people come out with can then be judged against that right answer. And that's the view that most valuation literature, and indeed the court, have taken in regards to measuring quality of valuation decision. And I'm sure some of you will be familiar with valuation accuracy and then valuation variance literature. They come from that outcome-oriented perspective, trying to understand quality by just looking at the valuation outcome. But we know that valuation is a very complex task, and there's no right or wrong answer, because valuation at the end of the day is an opinion of the valuer, and opinion can differ from one person to the other. And so because of that complexity and the fact that it is human judgment, it is very difficult to measure quality by simply just looking at the valuation outcome. So we saw an alternative approach, which is the process-oriented approach. And that process approach argues that quality comprises of a set of attributes that stakeholders usually value. So you talk about client, there are a set of attributes that clients want, and that's how they will perceive a quality. And that's taking a more behavioral approach about what quality actually means. And we look at valuation literature and we saw that not a lot has been done in terms of understanding quality from that viewpoint. So we decided that we're going to adopt that approach in our research to try to understand what valuation quality actually means. And we also realized that even though the valuation profession has developed standard and procedures used in practice to evaluate the work of valuers, little is still known in valuation literature about what valuers actually perceive as constituting a quality valuation. So we set up these aims for our studies, but as I said, this is still ongoing research, so I'm only able to present findings of the first two aims based on the analysis that we've undertaken so far. So what we're seeking to do is to explore valuers, how valuers construct the meaning of valuation quality. And from there, we're hoping to develop a theory of the important construct, shaping the way valuers predominantly frame their conception of the meaning of valuation quality. And our ultimate aim, our long-term goal is to be able to develop a practical guidance to improve valuation quality. And by that, we're hoping to develop a framework through which valuers can actually understand quality and they can actually embed that in their work. But also, we hoping that our research will be able to inform the effective teaching of valuation. So we took a more qualitative approach, and this is not something that is common within the evaluation literature. A lot of evaluation articles usually adopt a quantitative approach, but because we're trying to have a deeper understanding of what quality means, we thought that a qualitative approach would be the right methodology. So far, we've interviewed 20 valuers across New Zealand, and we usually just start by asking them a simple question: what does valuation quality means to you? And based on the interaction, we develop other checking questions to try to probe further based on the response we get from the valuers that we interview. So I'm just going to quickly, because of time constraint, I'm just going to quickly share with you some of the findings that we're getting so far. All right, so I have 5 minutes left. So I'm just going to the preliminary findings. And one of the themes that came up very strongly and was repeated a number of times by valuers is the fact that valuation quality has to be, in fact, the way they frame the meaning of quality, they do that by either referring to the report or referring to the valuation figure or referring to the valuation process. So in referring to the evaluation report, what they are telling us is that the report has to be informative and readable, and also it has to tell a clear story. So in essence, what valuers are telling us based on, and you can see from the quotes that I've put in this presentation, they are saying that in order to demonstrate quality, the report needs to contain a clear rationale and a logical flow from beginning up to end. So what they're saying in essence is that the valuer will have to be able to define the step-by-step approach that he or she has adopted in the evaluation in order to take other people through the process, through the thinking process, and as you can see from the quotes. They also emphasize the need for the report to have the client in mind. In fact, what they are saying is that if the client cannot understand the report, then it's not a good report. And that's quite significant because as valuers, sometimes we tend to be carried away with all these technical jargons, and we are always tempted to want to put a lot of those technical jargons in our report. But at the end of the day, what they are saying is that the clients may not even understand half of what we're saying. So it is important that we communicate in a very simple and then logical manner in a way that the client can actually understand the valuation and be able to follow it from the beginning up to the end. Another theme that came up very strongly is that what they're saying is that the evaluation has to be accurate. The evaluation figure has to be accurate and it has to be well supported with evidence. So, as you can see from those quotes, a quality valuation is one that has good rationale, is logical, well thought out, and gets to a conclusion that makes a lot of sense and is accurate. So, in a sense, what they are saying is that the quality depends on how well you've analyzed your evidence and how well your evidence is able to support the evaluation conclusion that you have reached. And that's an interesting dimension and something we are now trying to probe further as to how can a valuer actually communicate in a way that clearly connects the evidence to the opinion of value that he or she has arrived at. But that's what they seems to be telling us, that there has to be a connection between the opinion and the evidence that supported the opinion. Also, one other thing that came up, and there are a lot of themes that we've identified, but as I said, because of time limit, I'm just showing you a few of them. They are also saying that the report has to reflect strong market and technical knowledge of the valuer, and also company reputation play a significant role in perception of quality. I mean, so what they're saying in essence is that the expertise of the valuer is also very important in demonstrating the quality, and the valuer has to be seen to have done a robust and a full investigation of the market, of the stakeholders that are involved in the market. And finally, they also echo a lot the fact that valuation has to reflect effective internal valuation process and regulatory framework. So there are some group of valuers that believe that quality is about following the regulation, making sure that you adhere to the international valuation standard, making sure that your report comply with the international valuation standard. But some valuers are also telling us that part of the way of demonstrating quality is to make sure you have a robust internal valuation review mechanism where people are able to share ideas, where people are able to discuss their evaluation opinions, and they are able to get a second opinion to make sure that at least they are on the right track. So just to summarize, what we get so far is that valuation quality comes from the participation of the valuer in the delivery process and doesn't necessarily reside in the final outcome. So the dominant view in literature is that valuation quality is about the actual judgment, the final outcome that the valuer has arrived at. But that's not what our research is supporting right now. Getting the sense that it's about the process, and evidence of quality is demonstrated in the process based on the valuer's process. We get that valuation quality requires a greater emphasis on effective communication and engagement with a client. But as a lecturer, this has changed my perception of what I teach, because a lot of the time we go to class and we think that what is important is to emphasize the numbers and to teach the calculations. But we are hearing from valuers in practice that it's about how you actually do communicate. And finally, the ability of the valuer to deliver quality depends on internal process provided by the valuation firms and the professional body. So that's my presentation in a nutshell. There's a lot to this research, but I actually thought I was going to speak for 30 minutes, but thank you very much for the opportunity, and then I will be glad to answer whatever question you have.
Thank you, Dr. Abdul Rashid, for your valuable insight. Because of the time constraint, we are not going to have any questions for this presentation. And also, we would like to ask the presenters to keep your presentations within 10 minutes, maximum 10 minutes. So now we would like to call K.H.A. Madhushani to present a study on environmental factors influence towards the political buyer's decision on luxury apartments in the city of Colombo and suburbs. Welcome.
Directly go to my presentation, chairpersons, ladies and gentlemen. My study is study the environment factors influence towards the potential buyer decision on luxury apartment in city of Colombo and suburbs area. Urban living spaces was derived as a result of the urbanization, further fueled by both population growth and institutional expansion. In addition, this is the social process which describes how cities grow and societies become more complex. As a result, the living spaces from suburbs to urban area have changed, especially with the respect to the limited spaces, or as well as the availability of land spaces. Urban living spaces has vast diversity, which include luxury condominium apartments, middle-income flats, and everything in between. In the architectural point of view, urban living focuses on buildings and residential spaces. The residential sector is most viable of real estate asset in Colombo and known to be the close to the personal desire in urban community. Luxury vertical living in urban and the suburban local cities has become increasing popular in Sri Lanka over the last few years. Buying an apartment is one of the most significant economic decisions that people make, and it requires gathering a lot of information regarding its features. The primary practice which affect when purchasing a condominium luxury apartment in city of Colombo and suburbs area affected by the few factors: environment, basic amenities, finance, physical factors, goodwill, recreation or the leisure, and emotional factors. Among these, environment factor in this study considered the environment factor. The environment factor influence towards the potential buyer decision, and the luxury apartment consider mainly two categories. The environment factor have classified into two major categories: apartment building environment-related characters and the external condition of the apartment. These attributes influence the value of the property and also an important role in the prospective buyer's decision. According to the EN 2030, the influence of the environmental factor needs to be in a place in property development appraisal or valuation, and environmental amenity should be continued to exist to preserve sustainable property market. In this study, aims to identify the level of priority to given the internal and the external environment features by potential buyers for the making a purchase decision in luxury condominium apartment. This study will attempt to fill the gap of understanding the concerning environmental factors that influence in potential buyers' purchasing decision. Main objective is identify the significant influence of the environmental attributes on the purchasing decision of customer in respect to luxury apartment in Colombo City and suburbs area. The methodology gives details the methods that adopt in the research in achieving the objective, the research which comprise process of the study area selection, justification, Tools and techniques of the data collection and analysis method. Study area and method. The questionnaire survey was carried out collecting primary data for the convenience sample of 120 respondents who are willing to purchase luxury apartment within the study area and made inquiries from related person of the real estate sector. The respondent profile are covered in category of gender, age, family size, education qualifications, occupation, total income per month, current and the preferred residential location, and purpose of buying apartment. Qualitative data analysis by SPSS, weighted average method, and factor analysis, KMO, were used to analyze the data, and it is used to find the significance of each attribute that influence on the criteria of buyer's decision. The status of the residential ownership and the customer intentions. The people who are staying rental basis in the family house, residence, or the lease or the staying at relative places have made inquiries condominium apartment purchasing. Living and the investment are the main two purposes identified for the purchasing of the apartment. Apart from that, most of the reputed companies going to purchase luxury condominium apartment within the Colombo city as their company asset to provide accommodate for their foreigners, visitors, or the investments. There are customers who have purchased apartment for the family and other reasons, such as transit place. Investment for rent or the resale, the main purpose of buying apartment, according to this study. According to salesperson's view, majority of apartment buyers prefer to rent apartment for the foreigners. The apartment owners can resell new apartment with the profit of the 200% or more in the most of the circumstances. The preferred locations of the respondents is mentioned like here. Their first priority is going to first and second, third. The location priority goes likewise, mentioned in the slide. These are the analyses. The attribute of wastewater management and the rainwater harvesting were considered under the water management of the apartment building. Under the weighted average method, both waste and the rainwater harvesting available at their building, they are considered as the least important factor. The solar energy of the apartment having more natural ventilation and the abundant natural light were considered as an attribute under the energy efficiency of the apartment building. Solar energy again considered as the less important, but the ventilation and the having natural light considered as the moderate important factor. There are 70% of customers have considered the air pollution as important factor. Noise from the traffic and the industrial noise were identified as a most important factor for their location. Open spaces and the water bodies identified as the main attributes under the scenic beauty. Open spaces and water body considered the most important factor by 52% and 49% respectively. The present neighborhood, prestige neighborhood, and the safety neighborhood are the identified factors under the quality of the neighborhood. The response have considered present, prestige, and the safe neighborhood as most important factor. To further analyze the common environmental feature that respondents consider before making a purchase decision on apartment, factor analysis has been conducted using the SPSS statistical data editor. Based on the survey, total 13 variables were used for factor analysis to identify the principal component which determine the environmental features of purchasing a luxury apartment. KMO is obtained as 0.638, which is considered as acceptable level for the analysis. Due to significant amount, cross-loading is a principal component matrix. Redistribution of factor loading was considered. In SPSS Varimax variable maximization, rotation is used to calculate the rotated component analysis. Based on the rotated component analysis, 3 clusters were identified with high correlation between variables. Based on the factor loading, the perception of the people which determine the purchase decision of the luxury apartment can be categorized into 3 main environmental factors. First one is energy efficient, natural light and ventilation. Second one, air quality in the surroundings. Third one, water management and the scenic beauty. By considering the relationship variables, it is visible that people focus on energy, air, water, management, and the scenic beauty before making a purchase decision on the luxury apartment. In conclusion, also the external and the internal environment factors prime focus on customer behavior of making a purchase decision. Ventilation, natural light, solar, available of rainwater harvesting techniques are considered by people in relation to the internal factors. The real estate development shall create neighborhood with natural element, renewable sources and the attractive residential communities within it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Madhushani, your timely conclusions. Now, the second presentation, Sampath Prasanna Dayaratna. His presentation is on an evolution partnership model for suitable management, sustainable management of natural forest.
Distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen, very good afternoon to everyone. Without taking much time, I'll straight away go into the thematic area of this presentation. This is an evolving partnership model for the sustainable management of national forests. When you really look at the sustainable management, national forest approaches are based on principles of industrial ecology, ecosystem services, social engagement and empowerment, visionary government policy, development and implementation for the short and long-term sustainability of national forest functionalities. It's required to empower and engage regional and local stakeholders in implementation process and practices to reduce the negative impact on the sustainable provision of ecosystem services. Having all this, I have developed 2 research questions. How to improve the national forest management to reach the level of sustainable national forest management, and how can return on national forest assets increase emphasis on the distribution of wealth and resources for the forest management, social well-being, and economic development. Having reviewed some literature, I found some benefits to the industry, which are sustainable national forest management offers the opportunity to increase industrial performance through increased materials and energy efficiency, waste recycling, and avoidance of regulatory penalties. Increased efficiency will enable national forest management to produce more competitive ecosystem services, which will help to ensure sustainable social benefits. And ecosystem services previously utilized solely by individual business will be shared among the members' businesses by the national forest management process. When you look at the benefits to the national environment, the reduction in many sources of pollution and a decreased demand for the natural resources, sustainable national forests will demonstrate in real-world settings and principles of sustainable development. The evolution nationally and internationally of sustainable national forests will support creation of more innovative approaches to achieve post-fossil carbon societies through the transitioning to renewable energy-based systems, pollution prevention, clean production, sustainable consumption, improved energy efficiency, manufacturing, recycling, resource recovery, and other environmental sound management technologies. When you look at the benefits to society, insight into the implementation of the concepts of ecosystem services will help governments to create policies and regulations that support sustainable management of ecosystem services, which supports ecosystem and human health while supporting the improved economic performance. Communities will benefit from new jobs created in much clean industry plants and management of sustainable natural forests. In order to come out this, I have done a lot of extensive amount of reviewed literature. This is the methodology I use as of now. And based on this literature review, my results and discussions are decentralized partnership-based model can go a long way to resolve some issues in relation to the management of national forests across the globe. Convince all the stakeholders to be equally involved in the management of national forests, stakeholder-centric partnership model for the sustainable management of national forests. Poor education and the low consensus towards the sustainable forest management. Ensure that the decentralized model requires the national forest within the community living area. Unfortunately, such requirements are not usually addressed during the village expansion town planning processes. Encouraging private-public community partnership to enhance the involvement in national forest management to derive the returns on assets and share benefits. Scope for the technology's intervention to improve the system to co-work with in such a way that stakeholders will enhance the productivity and returns from the investments. Open communication, mutual respect, and shared decision-making. And policy framework must recognize the requirement of technologies and employ a systematic approach to classify the value of the natural resources in the region by analyzing the economic value of the society, economic value to society that the ecosystem provides, and develop the business model for the sustainability. My conclusion recommendations are sustainable national forest model can become combined with the valuation model to work with the valuation of ecosystem services to improve sustainable national forest management. And having such multi-stakeholder participation in management will help to accelerate the transition to post-fossil carbon societies. And my recommendations are applications of the financial and non-financial measurement model through the public-private community partnership, develop a model to identify the net benefits to help to provide the cleaner manufacturing and the process of sustainable national forest management. And finally, my conclusions are by proper planning and involvement, policymakers will be more effective in enhancing the sustainability and economic value of the national forest natural resources. So that's my findings as of now. These are part of my thesis journey, and more will come out later. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sampath. A nice presentation. And third presentation, I would like to invite Manjula Pushpakumara Hinkenda.
Good afternoon, the panel, and also my chief valuer. Several speakers discussed about my topic in earlier. My topic is GIS-based landed property valuation model. The subtopic is reference to external factors of the comparative method of valuation. This is important for me. This is my background. Here, the manual process of landed property valuation system consumes a lot of time, money, and many kind of resources to reach the valuation goals. The current system cannot be updated itself, and in each case, it has been repeated from the beginning. But individual personal valuation databases are always processing in professionals' mind. Everybody knows the comparative method in my field. The main characteristics of property value, there are three main categories: internal, external, and economical. The literature describes the external factors. What are the external factors? My objective is to design a base model, it's called GeoDatabase, to accelerate the land property valuation system. These are my key area of methodology. The first thing is defining characteristics. How I decided, it shows reviewing the literatures. Criteria were selected based upon the pilot survey with experts in the field. The following criterion extracted and selected for the study as best suited. The most important factor is proximity. There are several factors: road, public bus routes, these are different kinds of factors, city, commercial belt, schools. There are a few, but I have chosen the several factors other than this. Then land use as main three categories. Then infrastructure facilities, electricity, water, wire telephone, digital infrastructure, and garbage disposal like that. Then demography, the planning controls, the most important factor, the future development, hazardous, quality of environment, terrain, sacred area, living class settlement, value decrease factors. The primary data I have obtained from several publications to digitize the data. Then most are secondary data. These are the sources I have obtained the data, the categories and institutions where I have chosen from them. This is my case study area. It's a Kandy Municipal Council area. This is the most important part in geodatabase. Everybody knows the Sri Lankan data sets are in SLGrid 99 model. Then we have to transform the database into WGIS 84. It's the most important part in the database. This is a sample data. This is factor weighting based on the professional perspectives. These are from critical, significant to not significant. This is my model design. The model design includes several parts: the location analysis, geostatistical analysis, spatial analysis tools, and also the 3D analysis in quite depth. This is the model. The right-hand corner, you can see the model. We can reuse again and again. This was developed by ArcGIS 10.5 Model Builder, and my main software is ArcGIS. The layer development was done by importing all digital data. This is my sample map, which was created by GIS. Composite main city proximity on AR distance. This is a buffering, multiple ring buffering. This is a complex analysis called network analysis. It is main city proximity from main city of Kandy. This is based on the distance levels. This is composite road proximity, A, B, and C grid only on AR distance. This is composite population density map. This is a terrain, most important for the upcountry. This is living class settlement. The hazards, another important feature. These are a few, but I have analyzed several criterions other than this. Then I have converted all the composite vector layers, the vector layers into the raster, and then reclassified again. Then assigned the weighting scales, and also developed the weighted overlay maps. This is the rasterized composition of the data composition. And then after I removed non-valuable regions, we call roads, rivers, and conservation unvoted area for this purpose, then derive the land value map. This is my final product. composite land value map on external factors of the comparative method of valuation. The results. The final map is composite result of statistically assessed criteria of the property value using GIS techniques that are technically sound and relatively justified. The model design is reusable and updatable. The geodatabase is updatable. Right, thank you.
Thank you so much.